And so we've come once again to the first roundtable discussion here at GatherVerse Education Crisis Summit 2026. Roundtable, I would ask that you please mute your mics until called upon, which you will do swiftly, as we have a lot to unpack and there's a lot of mountain to climb in this little bit of time that we're given together. I'm so happy to see each of you that have come to join us at GatherVerse.live and with all the different people that are with us, whether from our various social streams or at GatherVerse.live proper, where we see there are many of you that have come to join us in this important dialogue and discussion today. Now, how we'll go is a bit of rapid fire sensation. We will be on and off on the questions that you see before you. We have a lot to unpack together, and we want to extract as much of the marrow as we can in this particular discussion. I know that each of you and many of you are returning here, and we're so happy to see you, and we're happy to have you join us. But we want for the audiences that have never had the opportunity to hear from you and to see you, for you to once again introduce yourself. And in this time, we'd like for you to briefly introduce yourself and to let us know what inspired you to be here at this particular summit in this particular hour. We'll begin with Dr. Ghaffari. We're happy to have you again.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Dr. Zakia Ghaffari. I am the CEO and founder of Farm Consult Academy. I myself am a pharmacist, and I've done higher education teaching for a number of years. And I also have 3 children of my own, and I have a number of students across the country where we do the lessons online. And I begin to hear from them all the challenges they faced over these past 15 years as far as how education has changed. So I'm very excited to be here and be a part of this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Ghaffari. Welcome. And Beth, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Beth Zukowski. I'm a co-founder of AI Between Worlds. I'm a former CTO. The main reason I'm here today is because I do have 3 children. I'm also the daughter of a teacher and the sister of a special needs individual. And so it's interesting to me to hear everyone's perspective and then also see how we can optimize for the future.
Thank you, Beth. We're looking forward to your expressions. Christy, welcome.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you today. My name is Christy Straw. I'm the founder of Lighthouse Leadership Consultants. The majority of my work is focused on trust and leadership, and honestly, what it takes to help people and institutions stay credible and also legible under pressure. And so I'm really here today. And what inspired me to be here today is because I'm really interested in closing the gap, which I believe is actually growing at the present time in our world, between many institutions which were designed to create human beings. And we need to get back to that in order to thrive. And education is one of those places where the gap is super visible. We're asking people, honestly, to operate inside systems that often feel outdated, while the world outside, as Christopher already alluded to, is changing at incredible speed on all fronts. That tension really matters to me, and that's why I chose to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for standing on business. And I just heard a puppy. Thank you, Christy. Welcome to the puppy. James, please.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, Christopher. Great to see and hear your voice. So I'm James Welniak, and I'm the Director of Mindfulness and Focus with CUP Advisory. That is CUP, that it symbolizes the CUP, the self. And I'm working with clients and organizations, teaching them about how to protect focus and attention, especially now with AI. And I'm also the male face of screen addiction, recovery, and prevention. And I'm here today because when I was a young child, I had a learning disability. I have ADD. My partner has ADHD. So we are the couple. And so I'm here as a person that, as when I was younger, I went to a Miss Pacey, and she taught me how to fix my stuttering problem because I was hyperactive and I had a massive stuttering problem. When I get nervous, like I am right now, sometimes the rabbit comes. So I'm here to really represent that male and that person that had a learning disability and some ADHD and ADD. So thank you.
Thank you, James. We're happy to see you, and we're happy that there was recovery. Teresa.
Hi, Christopher. Thanks for having me. And I really love this topic, the education crisis. I think it's so timely. And yet we could have had it many years ago as well, because we go through this problem that keeps on coming up over and over again, which is learning poverty. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too. And my background connecting that is I'm the CEO and founder of Make a Difference Now, which is an organization that I founded over 17 years ago that focuses on making sure that children get out of poverty and they get the right access to education that will enable them to rise up out of poverty. But we often see that we're making them go through the same structure of memorization and not really connecting them to what employers need. And I've ran an orphanage for many years. Now I'm working on an LMS with our team to make sure that AI helps youth prepare for the workforce and gives them really hands-on tools and scenarios to make it really relevant to what employers are needing in the workplace. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that and just hear from everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and for the champion work that you find yourself engaged in. Dr. Jane.
Hi, how are you? They're always wonderful to have these conversations. So I have a PhD in biomedical sciences. I've taught in 4 different countries, mostly medical nursing school, but I've done K through 12 outreach. And I just, over my career, I go so frustrated about any students who have, ADHD, learning disabilities, the struggles, multilingual. And so after the pandemic was just such a catalyst for realizing the existing disparities. And so now my husband and I founded Med Micro Maps, and we do XR gaming. And so our game Microbe XR is coming out this May for Quest. And we're actually initially, we were for medical students, but we said, it's the teenagers who really need this, and they can learn so fast if they have multimodal and they have choice and autonomy. And so I'm very much promoting ethical AI XR adoption and education, and really focusing on the fact that my daughter's 16 years old. So that teen population, they need help. So thank you for having us.
Dr. Jane, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's very apropos coming off the heels of a very powerful Women's Health Summit, and medical education is tantamount, especially when it comes to this discussion that we find ourselves in. Shall we begin, everyone? So we're going to be a little bit unorthodox here and not start with the first question, but I want to be able to pick quite a few brains, and I see that I have a whole assortment to be able to choose from. Christy, we're in a crisis, an education crisis. Where do we go from here?
Oh my. Well, I think the first thing is just being real about where we are. Let's call it what it is, right? People are leaving with $200,000 degrees and can't find $35,000 jobs to afford their $700,000 house that's in a third of an acre lot with their 7 roommates. Like, I don't mean to be depressing, but that is actually the state of affairs. And so if we start with the way things are, and we start with the gap between where they are and where we need them to be, we can begin to have the real conversation. And I think so much of that comes from people recognizing that as AI continues to obviously take over the world, let's call it, right? Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. There's lots of great cases. The point is the human behavior and the human being becomes so important, even more so now when most of the humans that are left are going to be relied upon for critical thinking, critical conversations, empathetic listening, empathetic thinking, compassionate leadership, etc. And so if we don't prioritize those skills in school, and we don't, and then we certainly don't prioritize them, and actually we bully them the hell out of corporate America, and we do, there is a big, huge gap in between. And that is the conversation that I'm interested in having. And those are my thoughts on how we start.
Thank you, Christy, and we'll return back to you in just a moment. Dr. Ghaffari, Christy just kind of laid out the state of conditions. We know that we find ourselves in an education crisis, if you will, and there's a lot to assort, some would say, but at the same time, how can we fortify and safeguard and deal with this crisis when we all have crises happening individually in our homes and the corporate environment and startup culture and more? How do we make sense of all this to be able to carry such a payload and at the same time address these critically more, I would say, staunchly urgent situation that we have coming, because the next generation, they're on their way. In fact, they're here. They're out the front door, and there's no slowing down, is there?
There certainly is not slowing down. I feel like the last 30 years, we have exponentially speeded up every aspect of living and life. And whether it's optimization, whether it's capitalism, or efficiency in the workplace, everything has gone to top speed levels. Having said that, I think each of us in our own little bubbles have done what we can, especially as parents, especially as educators ourselves or practitioners ourselves. We have tried in our own bubbles to do what we can to help our own communities. And so we need to sit, as you have gathered us here today, Christopher, we need to sit together and put all of our bubbles together and see what makes sense so that we can have something uniform moving forward. What I see now is my own children are going, my oldest one is 18 years old, and she will be attending college soon. And so I have gone through the entire roller coaster of it through with her, and as well as my younger two. And although it might feel overwhelming to those on the outside, but for those who have been in the trenches from day one, from kindergarten upward, we see where the system falls short, and we see where we need more support, and we need more community, and we need more ideas to come together. So what I see is we have a system where everything is based on not necessarily merit thinking or critical thinking. It's based on pure memorization, as was mentioned in the past, but it's also based on how you're grading and what numbers are you getting, and are you an A student but not being tested on, do you understand what you're actually answering? Do you understand what it is that you're reading?
Sure.
And if we don't have that type of critical thinking encompassed in all of education, whether it's math or any other subject like history, which is very important, then we're becoming like another version of AI, right? Where it's artificial intelligence instead of who we are as humans, which is we have actual intelligence. We can take facts, and we can take history, and we can take numbers and put it through our own unique brains and come up with something that's creative and that's different, that will help all of humanity, instead of spitting back what ChatGPT, for example, will spit back to us, which is exactly what it has been taught to say. So what I want to see for the future of our children and for humanity is to go back to our roots, really, where we were thinking more in terms of individuality and our own personal thoughts, and how if you are told this color is red, do you simply say, yes, that's red, and then you leave it at that? Or do you sit there and think, how do you know it's red? How come, what if I'm colorblind? What if this person is seeing a totally different shade of red than I am? If we don't have these types of conversations, and we don't leave room open enough for students to be able to comfortably talk about these things, I think we are going down this path of exactly why the education system was institutionalized 100 years ago. We're just making and producing more workers for the system, but not individuals who can think on their own. So the minute that you're out of that system, out of that pathway, and you have to think on your own feet, everything falls apart.
Well,
right?
let's talk about
survival skills or critical thinking at all.
Sure, but we talk about this thing falling apart, and we talk about having these conversations, but many people don't know where to begin, Dr. Ghaffari. Beth, we'll come back to you, Dr. Ghaffari. Beth,
Yes.
Where do we begin? We talk about our youth. Dr. Ghaffari's daughter, she's getting ready to go to school. Congratulations, Dr. Ghaffari. That's quite an accomplishment for you and your family. But she's getting ready to go in school, and the school that she's going into is a world that we do not know. It's a different world than what we grew up in, and it's a different time than what we know. Beth, where do we go, and how, more importantly, do we see from the eyes of our youth?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting how things have not changed in a lot of ways between when I was growing up and getting ready to go to university, and I now have two children in university, and um, and it's interesting to watch their paths, and each child takes a different path because, as you were saying, each child is an individual. And now this is very US centric, I'll say. But I know that the way that the kids are taught is going to be very different depending on which university they go to and
Right.
then what the outcomes are. But one example is, my son's school is very focused on co-ops, and it's very important that the kids all get opportunities to go out and work in the real world. But they're finding that it's harder and harder to get those roles, that the companies aren't opening them. And I would say a big opportunity is for companies to leverage the schools, to leverage the universities, and to partner with the universities more and more so that the kids are coming out with the right skills. Even with AI, I would argue that a lot of college age kids don't know how to use AI to help them with their studies or to help them with really understanding the material. And there is opportunity there. Yes, obviously there's risk and there's some problems there, but I do see a lot of opportunity with AI. And I also see a lot of opportunity for partnerships with the companies as they evolve and the markets and how they can bring students along so that they have growth potential, so that they have earning potential, and so that they can be a stronger member of the community.
I know that that would be ideal for companies and corporations. And thank you, Beth. I know, audience, that it would be ideal for companies and corporations to partner with these educational platforms for youth to be able to have smooth landings. But it seems the reality is that corporations, many of them, aren't necessarily interested in partnering with education when it comes to youth because they're not even holding on grasping on the idea of all the attrition that's happening in these companies and corporations. They're not even holding on to their own people, let alone seeking new people. They're making deals when it comes to machines. And we see this happening more and more. And the cold, stark reality is we have to ask ourselves, Dr. Jane, when it comes to education, what are we educating for? I just heard Dr. Ghaffari briefly talk about the fundamental reason that we have these educational institutions in the first place, but I believe that that's being challenged and disrupted because the idea was that we would go in to get an education to make something to be able to have more of a persistent life in this environment, in this republic for us that abide here in the West and elsewhere. But if that's being disrupted, where do we find ourselves going to next? And the reason that this is so important for you, Dr. Jane, is because you happen to be in a very thin vertical where if education stops, we stop, because medical education is one of the most important at the top of the list of the order for where it is that we find ourselves in. And if we're operating under the banner of machine learning, machines will never know the scent of the sea or the feel of the human heart. I find this to be rather troublesome in the vestiges of the medical theater. Dr. Jane, what have you?
so much. The core in my experience of being a student, parent, educator is why. In that, whenever I was in high school, I was a very precocious. I loved science. I knew I wanted to go into teaching, and I'd always ask why. And my high school teachers hated me because it was all about memorize, test. And then I got into medical education, and to me, I wanted to infuse the stories of the people and the cases, and that's what a majority of my students would get mad whenever I was telling a story. They're like, I just want to know to memorize on the test. Well, what happened in fall of 2020, or I was teaching in fall, there was something new, and there was a new story, and there was a new why, and the students could not handle it. And so that's what, in some ways, yes, we are in a crisis, but I'm happy in a lot of ways because there is the younger generation, they absorb so much information, and they love why. If you give them the purpose and the meaning, and I just want to touch about the understanding about science in our bodies, AI will not, does not, cannot. I'm doing AI training as consulting, and I can stump every single model because every human is different. Every case is different. The AI is trained on textbooks. It's trained on what the exact, like the typical, the normal. Well, what if you have a patient who's got unusual or an underlying immunodeficiency? AI cannot. And so that's what I love, using technology with a more holistic teaching. I use my hands a lot of being like, this is the body, this is the person, this is their experience. And this is why they're having medical symptomatology or how to lead a better life. And all the models that I've worked with, and I go on about the studies that are being done at Harvard for cognition. The AI can never get that subtlety of humanity. So in a lot of ways, I'm happy that we are disrupted. I'm happy that this old system is just inefficient, in that it's causing institutions and educators and parents and doctors and all of us to be like, whoa, wait, this isn't working. We all agree in that. How do we make it better?
Sure, I favor this disposition as well. This position, I should say, of disruption here in Silicon Valley. I know that it's frowned upon, but as an accelerationist, I think that it's absolutely necessary in some ways to get to something better. And we must admit, in some regards, or perhaps in many regards, artificial intelligence has been a solid, a strong accomplice, and it's helped in many aspects of science and biomedical discovery and laboratory reproducibility, so forth and so on. And so, Dr. Jane, we'll come back to you in a moment with that. But Teresa, I want to go down to more of a granular level with the consideration of what Beth and Dr. Ghaffari has expressed when it comes to our youth, and that Christy has also expressed when it comes to crisis. I hear that. I hear education. I hear youth. I hear crisis. And while on one hand, disruption is favorable for many, so it helps to be able to take that which is old and replace it with something better. I like the idea of that. I'm fine with disrupting and replacing the system. I'm not fine with disrupting and replacing our youth and their core faculty of function of thinking and judgment. Because I think every time we use these machines, we're sacrificing something that we're given since coming from our mother's womb. Teresa?
Yeah, it's forcing us to get to a point where we have to figure out who our voice is again. Because when we rely on AI for communicating for us, we forget who we are sometimes, right? And what our voices are. So when I'm working with youth, I often actually encourage them to utilize AI for efficiency. I say why we're going to embrace it is we want to be as efficient as possible. Now, something that could take hours or a day will now take you minutes. But now what I need you to do is look at it and review the quality of what you have been given and figure out where is your voice in this? What is your voice? So really think about that. And AI enables us to do that too. I think it's fascinating because we can just rely on what is communicated. And I have seen over and over again that our youth tend to do that. And now I'm actually encouraging them and forcing them really to stop and think about where is their voice in this. And it's been a really fascinating exercise. Not only that, but what we've been utilizing AI for is to really learn management skills. Because when you're utilizing AI in the right way and you're giving AI the prompts that are needed, you actually get management skills, which our youth never got before. And I never got growing up.
Sure.
So how do we utilize it to get management skills, to tell AI exactly what we're looking for, and to bring that authentic voice out? You can do it. The other thing that's great about AI is really trying to get, as we're getting working more and more remotely, we need workers who know how to manage people remotely. And with AI, we can teach management skills. We can figure out how to take a youth who would never know how to manage themselves and teach them how to manage themselves. So what does that mean? That means when you're having someone work maybe in another country, they need to focus on time management. They need to know how to check in with you constantly. Communication is everything. When I have remote workers, I need them daily checking in with me and telling me what they've accomplished that day. That's something that we didn't need as much before. And now it's forcing them to stop and go, okay, what do employers want? Employers, when you're working remotely, you need someone to be constantly following up because you're not in the same room as them, right? So when we teach these skills, they're following up. They're saying, today, this is what I did. This is how I accomplished it. Is there anything else that I can do for you today? You know, just that skill is something that a lot of the youth didn't have, and they're now learning it. We're embracing it as much as possible, but we're doing it in an authentic way.
What does that mean, authentic way? How do we define authenticity?
Right.
Skills.
Yeah, you have to dig deep. It's not easy with AI, but for example, youth that were sponsored through our program, giving updates on how they were doing, were once here, we would see their mistakes, right? And now they're all sounding like robots. So, which is awful, which we have to stop and we have to go look at how everybody's sounding the same. Who are you? What's your voice? Let's dig into that. We don't want to lose you, right? This is how you were before. Let's bring that back again. Doesn't mean that you can't use AI, but I want you to start with who you are. AI is going to be used to make it flow and correct some of the mistakes, but you need to pay attention to what those mistakes are and learn from it.
But Teresa, I have to ask: are the youth receptive to that? On one hand, it seems that we're bringing balance. One hand, there's AI skill and development. The other hand, human integration as the follow-up.
Love that. Yeah, I love that you asked that. They weren't receptive to it at first. They really wanted to it sounds so much better. AI sounds better than me. But we push back and we push back again. Because I know them, I ran an orphanage, right? And all these youth sounding certain way. And then all of a sudden, 1 year, they're all sounding the same. So it's really taking the time and pushing back and saying, look, you have not completed this yet. We're not giving you your tuition until, I know this sounds terrible, but you're not getting your tuition until you get to your authentic voice. And we know who that is. This is not you. And so there are times where it may be, a chart that they have to do and it's efficient and it's quick. But when it comes to the voice and who they are, we're actually having that programmed in. So they're getting to know AI and learning more about who are they, it's really actually been fascinating and really an amazing experience for them to get in touch with who they are. Because I don't think a lot of youth have had to stop and think about what their voice is and who they are. So it's work. It's pushback.
I certainly hope that you're open sourcing this work and making it more transparent to the world, because I would submit to you that, Teresa, you are amongst the few that are pioneers. And this is the reality that we find ourselves in. Think about this for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, here at GatherVerse. Think about that, James. Think about what was just said, that they found a way. They're finding a way. They're fighting for a way at the time where the innovation doesn't stop. It continues to flow. It continues to be more capable. And the youth, and many studies are showing, contemporary to our time, they would rather hear from the machines than humans in a lot of ways when it comes to learning. But I sit here and I think about this, James, and this is applicable to you, actually. I sit here and think about what Teresa's saying. The youth have adults that are telling them what to do, but adults are doing the same thing. Adults are sounding the same. They're writing the same things. They're saying the same things. And they have no one that's saying, well, what about you? James?
I can give you, a real example here. So I'm sitting in a hotel in Aracaju, Brazil. So my other half is Brazilian, the co-founder. So we're actually meeting with investors for our framework that talks about focus and attention. And so when I've been coming here my third time in 2 years since my recovery, and Brazil has been 10 years behind the US. And as an observer, as someone that does not know Portuguese, I have to watch. And I have been watching this decay of a beautiful culture that's here. And it's because of the phone. I see it. And so we are actually talking with licensed therapists as well as with educators in Brazil, because they're open to spirit. They're open to new ideas and not the old ways, because we're still teaching information transfer. And when you are a person that struggles with anxiety, your standardized test system is going to fail because your attention is broken. Your focus is broken. I'm patient zero of that. Many people struggle with that test anxiety. And so that's really what our framework does, is that it teaches you to be resilient. Like even before coming to this, Christopher, if I may, I did one of our breathing techniques that handles that inner rabbit, that gets you, shuts out that voice, shuts out that, I am not, and then you just rise. And so this is what our framework does, is that it teaches people how to be present within themselves and be comfortable within their body, because distractions are much, much worse than I was a child. You know, I'll be 53, and my mom knew that I had attention problems, but they didn't want to give me Ritalin. And so they went through it, and so they reduced distractions for me. And so I can't even imagine when you have it on the roads, in the cars, and I see it here more now in Brazil, especially Sao Paulo, but even the smaller towns, Christopher. And so that's why we're here, is that we are sharing our program to other countries that would be willing to pilot this, and investors, because look at it, freaking works.
You know, I sit here and think about it. That's what you're saying under the sound of your voice, James, as well as everyone else's. And thank you. We'll come back to you in a moment, Christy. I sit here and see hear these expressions, but I look at each of you, and most of us have been in an experimental phase, haven't we? We've come through what we say Web 1, Web 2, certainly Web 3 and beyond. But Web 2 meaning centralization of social media communication. That was all experimentation, really. It was. And not necessarily under the banner of conspiracy theory, everyone, as I sit here and look at you. But I sit here and look at the other side of that, and I think about James, who has had dealing with social media addiction. When he showed us this image of him being in the hospital and recovering from that, I want us to consider the magnitude of what it is that we're dealing with, because I'm going back to what Teresa is talking about when she's saying that we're using this technology, and we're using this technology to be able to teach, and it's upskilling, and it has benefits, as Dr. Jane and so forth has expressed. But I sit here and think about this, Christy. I want us to think about this for a moment. On one hand, we've come to find out that social media can be addicting, and it can be too much. Digital presence can be too much. But on the same hand, as soon as we tell our youth and we tell adults, push away from the machine, enjoy life, enjoy Earth as much as you can, we're already going right back to another medium of social communication, to machine communication. And we're right back in front of digital. And it seems to be harder to minimize or to move ourselves away from technology where it's not as persistent in our environments. And as soon as we think we're getting a little bit inching further away, here we are back again, right here, and having to use technology, whether we like it or not, because this is the future of upskilling. This is the way that we interact and we communicate with one another. And Christy, I find this to be concerning. And I'll say this too in the moment, and Dr. Jane will come to you in a little bit, because you're dealing in visual intelligence. And what we interact with the machines now, Christy, is nothing compared with that which is to come. The magnitude and the orders of magnitude, OOTD, of which is to come on how we interact with machines. Right now, we're tapping and we're pressing and we're touching these devices. But what happens when we get inside and we live inside of these devices and these machines? Christy, what say you?
I mean, I don't even know if I have a great answer. I mean, that's the truth, right? I don't think anybody on this panel would have a great answer, but here's what I can say. Trust, which my whole business is built around trust. Everything I do is consulting around trust and how to improve it, to close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Trust has become more fragile, right? Students now have access. I see it. I have 3 kids, right? A senior, a freshman, and a 7th grader. So they have access to more information and more alternatives, and honestly, more visibility into whether an institution or whether a person or a business is truly serving them, or whether they're just capitalistic in nature, whatever the case may be. And technology hasn't improved trust in any way, especially now that people can, and certainly look in the side door, we might say, of how people really are, and are their actions and what they're putting out in the world really aligning with what they espouse them to be. And
Sure.
in many cases, frankly, it has exposed problems, right? And also it's exposed where institutions are really slow to adapt or to adopt any sort of a modern future-proof take on the generation that is already here. And by the way,
That's right.
raised by women like me and others who are on this call, they don't want the same thing, right? So that's a problem. It's a broken structure, right? Authority is a problem. Resources are a problem. And honestly, they're being expected to adapt constantly, manage their behavior, integrate brand new technology. Oh, sorry, it might blow a breath of snow in Charlotte today, so we're going to have a remote learning day. Okay, the kids are like, well, let me get all my... Think about this. This is their everyday life. And by the way, also then communicate in a multimodal fashion, often without the support they need themselves. So frankly, I'm grateful for AI because there's at least some support solutions. But again, we're not integrating AI with how it actually helps us be better humans. That's the problem I aim to fix.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear. And shout out to the superhero agent, GatherVerse, home of She Summit, and more, and women leadership. We are firm advocates of that. I have a follow-up for you briefly, Christy. I sit here and I think about what you're saying and what's been expressed thus far this year. It is a problem, isn't it, when the majority of these machines are male-made? Let's talk about that for a second. And Therese is using these machines, and I'm using these machines. Dr. Jane, we're all using these machines. It's not as taboo as it once was to admit. We use it every day. Give me that AI. I use you every day, and you use me, don't you? But it does. We're just using each other. But Christy, how do we take on this challenge? And Dr. Ghaffari will be with you in a moment, I promise, and Beth as well. How do we take on this challenge when the machines themselves don't have a semblance and a better understanding of what's needed for women?
Oh my. Well, pardon me as I lose half of our audience globally, because I'm going to say what is unpopular. First of all, most systems were not built by women or with women in mind at all. And so there's a natural inherent bias already locked in. We do have some great organizations that hire some others and myself to come in and do beyond the bias training and how to look at how you are already introducing bias and it already is prepackaged and introduced when we get it. So one, awareness. Say the damn thing. There's bias in it. Say that you use it. Say that you would like to fix it. Say that you know there's a known issue and a root cause and we're going to fix it and do some training around it. And then actually do it. And even more bonus points for any of those with corporate dollars who would like to care about these causes outside of the month of March.
Well, you haven't lost half the audience and you've gained more. I can attest to that as we see those that are still arriving. And we have many, and thank you for all of you that are joining us on GatherVerse.live and our various social streams. We're very happy to see that you care such about this topic. Dr. Ghaffari, I would lend the same to you as the coming off the heels of what Christy just expressed. It seems to me I don't need the preloaded question. What have you?
I think Kirsty brings up some incredibly important points, as do each of you actually in this discussion. What I would like to see is the way we used to train the youth in life and as well as being a part of the economy and the social structure was we had mentorships, we had apprenticeships, we were like role models to them so that they didn't have to figure things out on their own in a bubble that didn't involve anyone else. The expression goes that it takes a village to raise a child. And truly, that's the same today. I mean, we lived like this for thousands of years. In the last 50 years, things have changed exponentially, but that doesn't make us any different than who we were in our DNA from 200, 300 years ago. And so whatever the system that we have now that is broken, in my opinion, because it doesn't integrate you as a human with a tool that is AI. We are not given the right ways in which to use it as a tool, and not to say that this is going to be like my right hand and I can only rely on this. And if I don't have my right hand, then I can barely function, right? That's a problem that I see, where it's not being used as a tool, it's being used as literally a part of you. And so when we move forward and we get into this space of how it's not.
Wait, but Dr. Ghaffari, when you say
Right.
that part of you, I don't want to smooth that over. Extract that some. That's a very powerful statement.
Okay, so this is how I feel, because it doesn't affect just our youth, it affects us as adults as well. And we as adults, as you mentioned in the past, in the recent past, we don't have someone else telling us, hey man, you're addicted to your phone, so maybe you should get off of it. Maybe you don't need to do that for 6 hours a day. Meanwhile, we, at least our youth, have us to say,
Sure.
you know, we will help you along. But at the same time, when you get into this position where we're going now from AI, which the last 2 years has integrated into all aspects of life more than ever before, and pretty soon we're going to get into, you know, VR and everything virtual related, where you have glasses on and you see a whole different world and you're living in a metaverse. The thing we need to understand is that our biological human brain does not understand the difference between a projection or reality. So, and I'll give you an example of this. There was this ride, we were on vacation, there was this roller coaster ride where it was just a row of seats. There was no roller coaster. It was a row of seats that were movable, and they gave us headsets to sit while you enjoyed this roller coaster ride, right? And I thought to myself, before I sat in it, I said, I'm gonna know the difference. This is silly. I'll just probably enjoy the seat going up and down, but nothing else will change. When I tell you that I saw, in fact, what I had read in theory before my eyes, I put the glasses on, and this was a roller coaster ride that went through Jurassic Park. So you're going underneath the dinosaurs and above all these different trees. And then at the end, there's a T-Rex that literally tries to eat you on the ride. I was terrified. And every person that was on that ride were screaming at the top of their lungs. But you know that this isn't real, right? But your brain doesn't know the difference. So if we are integrating things like this, where it becomes a part literally of us, of our thinking, of what we see, of what we how our brains function, if you don't have something built in where you understand the difference, that this is a tool and this is not part of your reality, but this is supposed to be something that'll help you to be a better contributor to society. If you don't understand that, then truly this will be like, what do they say, transhumanism, where you become a part of the machine doesn't become a part of you.
Well, let's take that moment for a second, and thank you, Dr. Ghaffari. We'll be with you in a moment if we can, sparing some minutes, and Beth will be with you in a second. Dr. Jane, we're going to pick this up for a moment because she ventured off into the metaverse, this virtual ecosystem of interaction and communication. You and I both study hyper-realistic immersive simulations. We know how authentic it's real. I know it may seem funny to some of the audience saying, oh, wow, she got scared of Jurassic Park. But I assure you that once the perceptual sciences kick in and the human factor ergonomics start to kick in, the cognitive reception to what it is that we're experiencing, she brings a great point, Dr. Jane. It's you and I see these experiences, we study, we use these tools and technologies, build them every single day. But I hadn't really considered the magnitude based on what Dr. Ghaffari is saying, that these same machines are communicating with us. The experience is that real in Jurassic Park. How much more will it continue to be as these embodiments, if you will, these machines begin to take embodiments in anatomical structures, so forth and so on? What say you briefly on this, Dr. Jane, of what Dr. Ghaffari just said?
I'm going to touch on a question of the role of women with the technology and very much, the ethical and authentic. Ethical and authentic are becoming more forward. And so XR Women, so we are a global community and really leading the way for the AI XR interface. I've studied the neuroscience of learning really to be a better educator, but led us into this development. So, my husband and I are in headsets all the time. We're doing game design for the betterment of the younger generation. And you have to have ethics and authenticity. And so that's actually in the design. So we're doing mixed reality, multiplayer. And when you have real people and you have real stories, it becomes so much more meaningful. And so that's what I'm personally excited about, the smart glasses and the true metaverse that is on our extended reality that's happening. But what is really resonating and really has users and learners and players being really, really tapped in is when you have real humans. And so in that, we are a very tech house, and so in headsets all the time. I'm on the computer. I got my multiple agents going at the same time.
Sure.
But in my life, I embed real world connections. And so I go into classrooms with our headsets. There's no internet. And so the gameplay is us in the moment right there. And there's not the sort of the theys what have you. I go and I walk my dog all the time. I might show my phone for a demonstration for our gameplay, and then I put it down. And so I think that that's something, just a general statement in all and everything that we do, is that using tech for good, and tech for good, the humanity and the humans are the center of everything. And so all the other ones are just they're peripheral. They're our Ask Jeeves.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. And we'll need people such as yourself that are on the front lines to communicate and convey this teaching of those. Just because you build this type of immersive, powerful technology, it doesn't mean you have to live in it, and that you advocate from at times staying away from it. It says a lot to me ethically about the work you're doing. Shout out to the XR women. They are huge partners of GatherVerse, and we care for them so much. Beth, I sit here and think about, while we're protecting the youth, as Teresa has expressed, why we're sitting here protecting the youth, and as Christy has expressed, there's not enough trustworthy based tools and compliance standards out there, especially with the regulatory board has lessened in this country. But we won't go into that. We'll stay apolitical for the moment. But briefly, very briefly, Beth, as we wind this roundtable down, and Teresa and James are right around the corner with you. Beth, very briefly, while we're protecting the youth, who's protecting you?
Well, hopefully we've all grown up in a place where we understand, we have good judgment. We understand how to use critical thinking. We have those skills already. Now, that might be a very broad assessment, and certainly not everyone has the luxury of having that. But I do believe that because we, and certainly my generation, grew up with people, right? So we understand what trust is. We understand how to trust people. We understand that gut instinct. And women even more so, just because we always have to be on our guard, right? So, and so I think, from that perspective, I think we do look at it a little bit differently than, say, our children.
Sure.
And I know when my kids first started going online, my advice, and even what I tell my parents today, is do not engage with people you have not met in the real world. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, it all boils back to that human connection, and is it real?
Thank you, Beth. That's very powerful. Let's not surrender our human judgment that we have, and we do carry a bit more responsibility, James, don't we? When we go from social media addiction to now subsequent prospect of machine addiction, let's just call it what it is. And I can't remove myself away from the thought of what Dr. Ghaffari just expressed about this machines become more as common as our right hand, and it's a part of us. And what happens when you attempt to remove that? We did see when GPT-4.5 changed, or GPT-4.0, and many people felt so emotionally disrupted themselves because they had some line of fidelity with these machines. But we're saying we have to move on, and your relationships are subjected to an algorithm. James, real quick and very briefly, and Teresa, we're coming right to you. How do we start to be able to fortify ourselves with more safeguard and production when it comes to how we interact with machine intelligence?
I think if the way that we look at education and the way that we look at screens, I don't call it AI, I just call it screens. We look at education and screens. If we don't protect the mind, support the body, and honor the human spirit, there's no technology in the world is going to save it. So we actually have to teach technology to teach us that what Dr. Zakari, you were saying is that with mindset and with technology and with your subconscious and before you go to bed and how you wake up and how you commute to work, what you're listening to, all that affects your mindset and your mood and your attention. So educators have been carrying the heart of these kids. And I remember my Miss Pacey. So educators need Miss Paceys that know about neuroscience, that know about the nervous system, that know about the stress. And it's not about therapy, it's just education. So that's how we change it. And we change it with our framework. Got to plug it, but that's really where it is. It's transformation. It's teaching kids. And there's so much neurodiversity, so much more about attention and focus. And when you got screens moving on the streets,
Sure.
and when you walk into a gym and teaching kids how to own their attention, you see it pulling, don't stay. It's a muscle. It's a strength. It's like a fitness class for your focus and attention.
Thank you, James, for sharing that. I think it's really important to emphasize that this heart, was in the hospital because of an addiction of social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, and this was at a time where the social media, if you were the humans were communicating, but the walls and the machine and the algorithms weren't. But now we face a situation where it is. Thank you very much, James. And Teresa, lastly, and at the moment before we close this roundtable, we go back to this balance. I find that that's a breakthrough. I know I don't want to diminish. I don't want to minimize what you just said. That you said, hey, we're going to teach you skills. We're going to take the advantages of AI, and we're going to hyper scale and hyper accelerate your understanding. But at the same time, we're going to instill in you, as similar to what Beth said, to be able to start building something within that making sure you keep aligned with human principle, human, if you will, innate, inherited emotion, if you will, and not be so reliant on these machines. Teresa, with all that said, what will you do with this newfound discovery of information, and how will you share this to the world?
James actually hit it. He really touched upon what I feel like it should resonate with all of us, and that's educating technology. And we've got to educate technology to do what we need it to do. What that means is how we're integrating AI even into our LMS is taking breaks. It is time to stand up. It's time to take some breathing exercises. You need to take a walk. So we actually integrate that in. We also integrate in delayed gratification. And that is essential right now. We need to, if we keep on going, we can't handle even getting into a book later. Too slow, moving too slow. So we have to educate technology to do what we need it to do to connect with the spirit. I know that sounds strange. Connect with our health again. We can utilize it for good. We just have to take control of the technology. And that's where we go back to education. Educators. This is all about the crisis of education. So let's go back to the root of the problem.
Sure.
And let's take control of it.
Dr. Kafari, Beth, Christy, James, Teresa, Dr. Jane, thank you for your time and for your moments. As quick as it comes, as quick as it goes, we'd look to be able to have you once again to join us in future gatherings and summits to come. It's been very enlightening, and it's so indicative of how many people are with us at GatherVerse.live and our various social streams that it was enlightened for them. We thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing. Audience, please follow them on their journey, connect with them. I certainly have, and I feel like I've come out on the other side better for it. Our gather was well.
Thank you.